Well, good morning. Good afternoon, actually. It's 1:00 here in the afternoon. Happy Sunday, everybody. And I hope that you're all having a beautiful, beautiful weekend and a lovely Sunday. And we have Lisa D in the chats. Can you see the comments, Yanna?
No, I can't.
Go to the top right corner of your screen, and there it says comments. So you just press on comments, and then you can see the comments coming in.
Yes.
There's Lisa D.
Gotcha.
Sorry for your loss, yeah. Anyway, Lisa D, nice
Gotcha.
to see you
Okay.
always. Yeah, thank you.
Here we go.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you everybody
you.
for joining us on Sunday. Yes, indeed. And yeah, always I think topics like this that we discussing are so bittersweet, right? But so important to actually deal with, because all of us deal with loss and grief and pain, and at some point, whether it's a partner, whether it's a child, whether it's a parent, whether it's friends. And it doesn't, I think, necessarily have to be anything as specific as that. It could be grieving the loss of a job or whatever. That I do believe is something slightly different, though. But when we're dealing the loss of a partner or a loved one, that always makes it kind of challenging. And I think everyone has such a unique experience. But good morning, friend Iola. How is Nam? Before I carry on and natter my chin off here, how is Nam?
It's windy. It's windy, and it's not winter yet. It's hot. It's hot where I am. It's hot. Winter is late in coming, which is nice.
It is late this year, even for us. I mean, it's a definite. When you can, in the last couple of maybe week or two now, winter is definitely coming in. But I went for a long, like a 6-kilometer walk this morning with my mom's friend's dog, and it was actually all the way around the lagoon, and it was just really cool. So nice to get out in the sun and what have you. But yeah, so we are talking about re-evaluating the steps of grief. And there really are 7 steps of grief, or depending what you're looking at, 5 to 7. But Yanna, maybe you just want to take us again just through your recent experiences, just for those who don't know your story. You can just talk about how you got to this place.
Okay, so it was 3 months on Friday, the 17th of May. On the 17th of February, I don't quite know how to describe Max. I don't quite know what to call him for me. But yes, he was my first ex-husband, the love of my life.
Your first ex-husband, how many have you had?
2. Including him. So 2.
That's not bad. That's not bad.
Yeah, it's not too shabby. I've still got a way to go to get to Elizabeth Taylor. But in any case, and yes, it was my birthday on the 17th of February. We'd been together for a year. He'd approached me again in February last year. And yeah, it was about, 6:30 on the evening of that Saturday. And he shot himself here in my house, in my driveway. So that's where we are. And that's why we're having this conversation today.
Well, I know we had a conversation a month after it happened as well. And I know you and I have been therapizing.
If you want to call it that these days, but in any case.
But you know what was weird was that we actually decided to start therapizing. And guys, I want to tell you, Yanna she's such a tough nut to crack when it comes to this sort of stuff. I mean, this girl is fierce, okay? She I wouldn't say grew up, no, but she grew up in Namibia. And as you all know, that's my favorite country. And but she's really looked after. She did a PhD.
No, not yet. Not yet.
Yes, busy with your PhD. Yeah. And working with the lions. Okay. So this girl, I mean, would be sitting with lions, feeding lions. I mean, she's fierce, okay, and she's sassy.
But I am scared of mice, I'd like to add. So I do have my weak spots. Terrified of mice.
Yeah, you see a mouse or a rat and you run. I'm so with you on that though. And so, you know, when it comes to anything like this, and even though she's definitely one of my nearest and dearest, um, she's tough and sassy when it comes to anything like healy-feely, as you used to call it, healy-feely stuff. And it was weird because about 2 weeks before Max took his own life, you said to me, okay, we need to start talking about things. And I was like delighted. So we've started that process. And then obviously when it happened with Max, and that was on your birthday as well, I was there. And I got to tell you, that had to be one of the saddest days for me. I think I cried more than what you did that day.
I remember that we agreed to speak at 12 that Sunday. I don't even remember that conversation. I remember everything but nothing of that day. Yeah.
It was you and D'Artagnan. And I mean, that was D'Artagnan's her son. And it was just such an amazing time, actually. And from there, just, you know, the realization and the shock and just plotting, because as you guys all probably know, I went through something similar many years ago, but not from him taking his own life. My partner was murdered, also with a gunshot. And so to deal with that as well is quite a trauma. But I think, and I mean, in the 3 months that this has been, you know, that this has happened, I have to say, I've dealt with a lot of these types of situations over the years. But in the past 3 months that you've been going through this, it's been actually phenomenal to see how you've healed, and you know the steps that you've been through, and whatever it is that you've experienced, overcome, because I think that is such an important thing in life, is that you can actually understand. You know, understanding is like, I don't know, I don't even know if that's the right word. I think understanding really just flies out the window for a while, but it's more just coming to acceptance. And as I was saying to actually off air, for me, that acceptance is more peace, coming to that place of peace, right? But maybe you want to talk us through how you've experienced that and what this journey has been like for you. And I really think you've gone through such an accelerated process, actually. It's been an amazing process of acceleration for you. So why has that been that way for you? Because oftentimes you're going to find people in these situations, they get stuck in the trauma, they get stuck in the drama, they get stuck in these memories that keep, just because, as we know, Max took his own life in your driveway, and you were the one that was literally taking his last pulse, calling the police, cleaning up everything. I mean, that in itself is a hell of a trauma, you know. Your son being there, your mum being there as well, you know. So the neighbors peering over the freaking wall.
Yeah. That people. But yes, I'm just, you know, when I heard the shot and I ran over, I didn't see it. I looked at him and I knew in that moment, and we call it acceptance. I mean, because those are the stages, right? So in that instant, I knew Max is gone. He shot himself. I'm never going to see him again. Everything's going to be different from now on, and I have to heal. I knew all of that instantly. It was an instantaneous. I knew that before I knew, oh my goodness, I've got to call the police, or I've got to call the family, or then so I ran inside. Yeah.
It was instant acceptance for you. It's not like there's that denial, because, you know, when you're looking at the 7 stages of grieving, you know, one of the first steps is denial. I'm just looking at it. Shock for sure. Let's talk about the shock. I mean, oh hell, that shock is on another level. I mean, I think it kicks you in the solar plexus. It feels like a buffalo has kicked you, and all your wind is gone. The breath has completely left you, and you just like standing for a few minutes, seconds, whatever, and you kind of like dwelling rond. If it means dwell,
I didn't dwell. I didn't dwell. I looked at him and I remember in my head saying to him in Afrikaans, what have you got? What have you done? Do you know that you're dead now? You're dead.
Yeah.
It's like I knew instantly that everything was now different. What was coming was, but I knew that a grieving process is coming. I knew instantly that my entire reality is now different. From this second onwards, it's different.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then,
And
I mean,
that's
the
the
shock is good.
acceptance.
It helps, it does help. But I got
Yeah.
stuff done and I called the police and blah, blah, blah. We went through all of that. Sunday morning was not that easy. It's that horrible thing. And people who grieve know that you fall asleep and then the moment you wake, it washes over you again. Oh my word. It's not actually oh my word, it's oh my God. And there's a couple of expletives in between that like Max is dead. I woke up for several weeks after that. That would be the first thing that I would wake up to. But yes, that Sunday morning, I still had to do some work because I was on new shift and I have to wait for the world to catch up. I can't be phoning people awake. But I let you know and I let my colleague know at work, the most important one. And we took it from there. And then by 9, I was drinking wine and smoking cigarettes. That's all I was doing. And trying to see if my son was all right. Yeah.
Mm.
And I don't really know what happened that day. I don't know. I just know it was a day. And then it was Monday, and then you deal with the authorities. And then Tuesday, I had to go back to work because I needed a reason to shower. I needed to get up. I remember my body, and I don't know if other people in grief can relate to this, but that my body was tired. I've got a couple of stairs to get to my room. When I got up to my room, I had to sit on my bed and rest. I had no strength, nothing. So I think grief also permeates the cells. That shock and that sadness permeates it's on a cellular level that you just experience this flattening of you. You just flattened, you clumped,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But I knew instantly.
But I think it's definitely so there was no denial. Obviously the shock. And then the reality of whatever the situation was settling in. But I think what we also spoke about, and I know for me that was also very clear, was when you wake up in the morning and you would have you're used to getting the messages in the morning. Good morning, how you do? How you doing? So it would be that morning rituals, if you will call it like that, the message or the voice note or something like that. And that, I think, for me, and I'm sure probably maybe for you as well, going through that was one of the hardest things to deal with. The loss, that emptiness, right? There's an emptiness that sets in. And that in itself, I think, causes anxiety.
Not just the fear, yes. It was, I remember feeling fear because I go to bed super early. So I would always get a good morning message that was sent, or I hope you slept lekker, but that was night while I was already asleep. So then when I wake up, I get the message, but then I don't bother until at least 5. And I had this ritual. I stop, I buy the paper. And then when I drive to the office at 5 a.m., then I send my message. So that was now gone. But I mean, I archived the WhatsApp chat the Monday. I put it away, and because I didn't need to see it. I think I might have, I remember I might have still asked you or somebody else, what do I do with this? So I archived that. Actually, I didn't archive, I locked it. And then the Tuesday morning, when I stopped to get the paper, because my son then said, D'Artagnan said, well then, voice note me. So I voice noted him probably about 3 times that first week. And then I just thought, Yanna, let it go. Let it go. There isn't a mux anymore to voice note. You can now talk to him directly, straight. Just let it go. It's gone. It's over. The food is finished. You wash the plates. You pack them away. It's done. And I let it go because it has to be let go. So yeah, I don't think about it in the mornings anymore. I haven't for about 2 months. I still do that same routine, but I don't voice note anybody. I'm thinking about work and planning for my day.
Yeah.
And if I do think about it, I'm not sad.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think you've come such a
So,
long way in such a short space of time, that's for sure. So if we look,
well, it's
so if we look
you.
at
It's you.
me,
Yes.
what did I do?
Therapy.
We therapize, but we have the best therapy sessions, and we have to
Yeah.
admit that, because I mean I
I
think
just
I
want
look
to
forward to us.
answer Lisa here. The never-ending questions of what you could have, should have, and would have done. I didn't have those. Because this wasn't a surprise. What happened was not a surprise. It wasn't a surprise for anybody who knew him well. They were expecting this, and I didn't know it in detail, but they were expecting this from the time that he was roughly about 15. So that's when he started
Yeah,
with his threats. Yeah. So it wasn't. I knew there was nothing I could have done. I didn't
yeah, and I
ever
think
have a
that's
feeling of, yeah.
I think definitely, and I know that about you, because you definitely didn't have. In my situation, I definitely had that. If I had done things differently, if I'd been there that night, if I had, I definitely had that in my grief process. I definitely had that. What if, you know, if I'd been different, if we had a different conversation then. If that had been different, would that have still happened? You know, and I want to tell you that can drive you completely bonkers
Yes, I'm
to
sure that must
actually
be
go through
terrible.
that. Yeah. So it's you know, and maybe that's the denial. I wouldn't have seen that as denial, because the first one is shock, initial paralysis of hearing the bad news. I mean, in my case, yes, there was definitely shock. Definitely, because obviously
Me
when you
too.
ID the body, it's like it's such a assault on your senses that you can't help but be shocked. And then after that, when the adrenaline wears off, there's just a numbness that sets in. That's for sure. Denial, yeah, trying to avoid the inevitable. I think maybe that if they're talking about that being denial, then I guess for me it would have been, if I had done this, that might not have happened. If that had happened, then maybe that would be, you know. Then of course we're looking at the anger. Okay, I mean I think anger comes in many different ways. Frustrated outpouring of bottled up emotion, yes. Anger, what I mean, it's not necessarily at the person, right? But maybe the situation. I was angry at the people who did it, because I had no idea at the time who it was. So why? They're just the constant questions. Why? What was your anger about? And I know that, but it wasn't. I mean, you had some moments, but it wasn't particularly long lasting, or out. You know, there were
No,
a couple of.
I just felt that if any of us had really actually dealt properly with Max's mental health issues,
Yeah.
if anybody had actually stopped to take a closer look, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
I missed like 25, 26 years there, because it was what we were married for 10 months, 97, and then divorced very early 98. I left January 98, and then we had ad hoc contact, and then February 2023, he's back. But I mean, we had those challenges when we were together and we were married, once or twice, and those, I just feel that we should have maybe dealt with those things. Obviously, neither of us were equipped; we were way too young. But I just feel more could have been done. You know, more could have been done, to not have this end, and not because I didn't want him to die, but because I just felt that he had so much more to give.
Right.
You know, I was never angry at him. never once. And I remember even with the blood, I discussed it with the last show. That was my job. I'm glad it happened here. I'm sorry it happened on my watch, but I'm also very grateful that it happened here, that I could make sure that everything was right, you know,
Right.
that I didn't hear
What do
it.
you think? What do you think sped that up for you? What frame of mind, from your perspective, sped that up for you? Sort of accelerated the healing there.
I think that the fact that I completely accepted that I was going to feel horrible, I was going to miss him, his suicide was invariably inevitable, and that if we had stayed together with a second time, I would have had to deal with it at some other point. But that acceptance and not being angry at him, I knew him so well. I know him better now, almost,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Right.
Because obviously you do dissect. I dissected that Saturday. And hindsight is obviously 2020. I see that there was
Right.
a risk. His weapon was on him. My mom saw that, but I didn't see that the weapon was on him because the weapon was always, his 38 was always with him, but it was always in his bag. My mom saw the weapon on him, but because I said to my mother, there's no issue with this gun, Max always has his 38 with him, she made no mention of it. So
Right.
if I had seen the weapon on him, carried by him, I would have taken it, but I would have just postponed the inevitable.
Yeah.
And I
Exactly.
think it's just that total acceptance. And also, I think, Chantelle, the most important part is that I didn't victimize myself. I didn't say, why me? I didn't say, why did Max have to come back and now he has to die? I
Yeah.
said, how do I turn the shit into gold?
Yeah. Exactly.
Because
And I think
stuff
that
like
I
this
was about
doesn't
to
happen for no reason, you know?
exactly. I was actually about to say that. And I think you never turned yourself into, as I said, turned yourself into a victim as to why me and if only had, should have. Yes, we will always have those types of thoughts on some level, but the problem that, the objective is not to get stuck in them, right? So, to understand that, yes, what I like about you is because you are able to be objective about these things. You can look at these things in a logical way and understand the emotion that matches that. So you're always going to have your logical mind and your emotional body that come together. And a lot of people at this stage, cannot deal with what they were seeing. And then they blame themselves. So when you start blaming yourself, well, why didn't I do something about it? Why didn't I see this sooner? Why didn't I see that weapon? Why didn't my mother take it from him? Why? It is what it is, and as you say, I think certain things, and I like the way you see that, because it's like you really would have just been delaying the inevitable. And I think some
I
things,
would also like to grant Max the grace of choosing his exit at a time of his
yes,
choosing.
exactly,
So everything worked exactly as it should have that day,
yeah,
whether I wanted it or not. I will
yeah.
understand later, but
It
everything
was
worked
his
exactly
choice.
as it should have. Yes.
It was his choice to go in the way he did. And I think a lot of us forget that, that suicide, and I always say this: people can be smoking and drinking and doing whatever for 50 years. That's a slow suicide, really, at the end of the day, right? But when they choose to take their life quickly and out of the blue, seemingly out of the blue, then suddenly the whole world is in up in arms, right? And
Yeah.
it's so true. It's about accepting that he chose to die on his own terms. And those were the terms he chose to go on, and doesn't matter what was going on in his head at the time. It's not up to us to decide that. That was his choice. And if we can look at it like that and sort of
Yeah.
say, I appreciate that that's the way he chose to go, was definitely something That is very empowering, because not only does it set you free, it sets him free as well, because it's never forget we're spiritual beings, and the spirit lives on, and that spirit of ease is strong. So,
Oh yeah.
so that denial of what is also holds that spirit back in many ways. So I think that's very important, is just to accept that. And I must say, even when Hannes died, right, for me it was not about, because I believe that the spirit will always also choose when and how it wants to exit. So even if it is done through murder, there's been that
Oh yeah.
sacred contract
Yeah,
between
there's no by
the
accident
murderer
death.
and the murderer. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he chose that as well. He chose that as well, on some level. And, at that stage, I mean, I'm going back many years, and I was really just starting to understand and study these things. So it took me a bit longer to get that, to grasp that. But when I got
The
it,
thing is
it made
also,
things a
death
lot
is not
easier.
our enemy.
Yeah.
We've got to get away from the thing that death is our enemy. I remember when I was very young, when my father said to me that we fight so hard to survive, and your only guarantee after you've taken your first breath is you will die.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
death, what is it? Ram Dass that said death is like taking off a tight shoe which you have worn well.
Yes,
There's just,
exactly.
I read a thing at one point with some woman, her father was an adventurer and he was very old and she didn't want him to die, and he said to her, please let me go, I want to see what adventures are on the other side. So
Yeah,
death is,
exactly.
and there's a life cycle. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, merely transferred. Max isn't gone, he's just gone from here.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Mm.
He's not gone from me either. He's just gone from here.
And it's so
Yeah.
funny how, but that's also the human psyche. We fight to survive. We want to live at all cost. So we fight to stay here, despite some horrific conditions that we sometimes find ourselves in.
Yeah.
Right? But hey, we want to stay. We're gonna
Yeah.
fight death until the bitter end.
And I also find that, I tell people and they're quite surprised. I tell them I think grief is very selfish because the dead are fine. We're
Yeah.
crying for us. The dead are fine.
Well, I
They're
always say
absolutely
death is
fine.
not about the ones that go. It's really about the ones that are left behind. So it's
Yeah.
about us, and how do we deal with loss, and how do we gain? Because for me, that was what my one sister said to me. She said, you've got the option here. You're either going to become another statistic in South Africa, very angry and resentful and blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
or you're going to turn this into something which is super powerful for you. And I chose the latter, and that is why, I mean, over the years, it's because of that I do what I do today. It's because of that I've, become the healer that I am. And that's why I can help a lot of people through death situations, because I know that we don't die. The spirit
No.
lives on, and we are immortal. And life on earth is just the experience. It's a part of our experience as to who we are, and we're always going to go back home. Some of us
The
choose
other
it
day,
early.
I had an interesting thought, Chantelle, which I was still going to therapize with you on Monday, but it's Sunday now, so I might as well deal with it quick. And I thought to myself, if I can get used to living without mucks and breaking those habits and those rituals, then I too can quit my smoking, because it really is just
Of
a
course,
habit. You see,
absolutely.
I've got to create new habits for myself. I had to, well, I'm
To
still
replace
creating
one with
those.
the other. Yes,
Yes. So um, it really is the same process, isn't it? Because there's a gap.
yes,
It's
absolutely. And it's obviously, like, smoking is an addiction. Um, but it's a body addiction. It's a physical addiction. It's like a cellular addiction. So the minute, I mean, I have no doubt, and I've proved this to myself over and over and over again. Any addiction can be broken within 24 hours. In fact, it can be broken within 24 minutes. Because again, if we decide to do something, right, but then we now want to go from 20 to 10 to 8 to 5 to 3 cigarettes a day, I mean, all we're doing is torturing ourselves. decide to do it, the minute that decision has been made, it's like you decided that there was no ways he was coming back, and you had to accept. That was your decision to accept. Whether we actually are consciously aware of it or not, it was your decision to accept the inevitable. And we could either mope and grieve and be angry and, talk about this and wear his clothes for the next year every day and sleep in his pajamas and not wash your sheets. Because that was, people do that. We laugh. I mean, people do that. It's actually quite uncanny. But the minute you make that decision to accept what is, you have no option. We are such intelligent beings. And the thing is,
but I also
your
welcomed
body,
my sadness. And I think
but you
sometimes
have
people
to.
are afraid of
No,
the
you have
sadness.
to.
Yeah.
You have to. That's the thing. And it's true what you were saying there, because if you accept that, of course, I'm going to be sad for the next 6 months or 3 months. Of course, I'm going to be sad, and I'm going to be sad, and I'm going to deal with my emotions, and I'm going to deal with my feelings. That in itself is a decision. So when you make that decision to deal with your emotions immediately come to the party. And they say, okay, let's deal. And then you realize it's not that bad, because why? Then you find people. Like in our situation, we were talking, and if it meant talking every day for 2 weeks, that's what we did. And not just that, but you also your friends that surrounded you. You had very cool people coming and speaking to you. And I know we selected during these times as well. The way D'Artagnan dealt with that was actually quite phenomenal as well. I was super proud of him, and just to be able to sit and discuss these things and not hide it, but also realize that the time comes where you also need to not talk about it. So you're going to sit within for a little while. You're going to journal.
There's also holding on to grief, though, hey? Because people have a tendency to hold on to grief.
But that's when they haven't accepted it, babe.
I don't.
When they haven't
accepted
accepted
it,
or
maybe they feel that if they release the grief, they sort of belittle the death and the memory of the person who has passed.
There's that as well, but that comes hand in hand with non-acceptance. So if you can't accept that the person's gone or chosen to go in whichever way they did, you're going to couple that, because it's like everything then gets entangled with the feeling of guilt, because how dare you be happy 2 months after he's gone, right?
Yeah.
So there's that feeling. But when we realize what death really is, as you say, it's removing a tight shoe, and you're going back into full spiritual consciousness, and you realize that it's never about the person that's left, because hey, they back with their creator, and they're at peace, and they're chilling, and they're having a good time. It's us going me, all the time, and making ourselves feel bad because we don't believe we can be healed so quickly. But when you accept that, and then you're always going to have the memory of the person. And there are going to be days, I mean, on birthdays, I've always lighted a candle. On birthday, and there'll be certain days that on birthdays and on the day we were supposed to get married, I'd light that candle, So for me, those were the days. But even the marriage day, then I'd forget. But the birthday, I've never, ever forgotten. But it now becomes a happy memory, because I also understand his death gave me so much more. He died for me. I will always maintain that, because had it not been for that, it changed me as a person. It made my outlook on life change very, very much. It gave me deep empathy and understanding for people. It gave me, same when I had my miscarriage, right? I had a miscarriage. And before that, I could never really understand why people were like so thing about a miscarriage. And when I had a miscarriage, it was like in those 2-3 weeks, your whole life changes. Suddenly, your whole perspective on life, you're planning for another little human to enter the space. It becomes a whole exciting thing. And when I had my miscarriage, it was like, I grieved the loss of my child, even though it was just a little thing like that. Do you know what I'm saying? So suddenly
Yeah.
I was able to have more empathy and understanding for a lot of situations. And when we're able to do that, life changes and we become different human beings. We become more compassionate. We become kinder. We become more empathetic. We become more understanding of other people and their stuff. And it doesn't mean that you have to now put up with people's nonsense. You can sort of say, okay, hang on, come, let's go for a walk. Come, if someone is going through that, because we know, and as well, there are people that just cannot let things go. I mean, there are people that will sit for years. They'll never have another relationship again. They're sitting there and it's like, come on, that's not what death is about. Death is about really transforming yourself, actually.
We must
And when we can,
embrace death as part of
yes,
life. It is
absolutely.
the most essential part of life, and it's
Yeah,
not the end.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's the beginning of a new chapter. It's the beginning of a new chapter in your life. And that's the thing. And I think that's what a lot of people are scared of. It's expansion of your consciousness, actually, if you choose to see it in that way.
yeah.
Right. And yes, to go through those stages, because then the other one is bargaining. I don't know if I ever bargained for anything.
Now they
Seeking in
say
vain.
that the bargaining. They say the guilt comes in with
Hmm.
bargaining. I
Oh yeah,
didn't.
the guilt
I
would
don't
be.
bargain. Yeah, no, I don't haggle
Yeah.
ever. Yeah, it's not who I am.
Depression, I think, yes, I think it's maybe normal to feel sad or depressed for it. But again, it's important not to get stuck in that. And I think that comes when maybe moments you're feeling low, maybe your immune system's low or you're feeling a little bit sick at the time. I found that when I'd have dreams, even because I'd often have dreams and I'd have dreams where Hannes would come and he was bringing me food parcels because I wasn't eating very well. I got as thin as I was, like as skinny as a beanpole. So I knew, and I'd wake up, and in that moment, there's just that emptiness again, right? And knowing that I had to eat, and I just didn't want to eat. So,
I
you
didn't
go
eat
into
either.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, go into that place of feeling really sad. Maybe that would be. But I remember my doctor wanted to put me on antidepressants. I said, "Are you mad? There's no ways I'm going on antidepressants."
No,
Um,
I took the meds. I took the meds with a smile, but I've got mine is a beta blocker. So my doctor knows better than to put me on happy pills. I'd be unmanageable. So yeah, got beta blockers. But yeah, so now I took
you would be
those. But
unmanageable. I'll vouch
but
for that.
there is that black hole, right? We spoke about the black hole. And in the beginning and people are making contact and you really feel like people understand what's happened and they understand your grief and time passes and life happens and the seconds keep ticking and the world keeps turning and people go back to their lives and then in traditional families, all the funeral food is finished and all the frozen casseroles and everything that was brought over. And now you've got to go back to life.
Yeah.
I had that for maybe 3 days. And remember, I still said to you, we should do a show.
Right.
And then I just said, I'm not, because I felt it pull me. And I said, I'm not going there.
Yeah.
I'm not going there. Let people go back to their lives. They've all got their own memories. They've all got their own sadness. Now we
Right.
live. We live. I just
Yeah.
refused. It got me there for about 3 days, but then I just pulled myself out and said, no, because that's just a never-ending pit, right? You're never going to get out of that.
Yeah.
That's why I call it
No,
the
it's
black hole.
it's a tough one to fall into that black hole, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people do tend to, and especially I think it also depends on their situations. I mean, if they've been married and financially dependent on that person or whatever. I mean, Hannes and I were together. We weren't married yet, but we were together for 7 years. We had a house together. We were, I mean, I've never been financially dependent on him, but we were obviously sharing expenses and
Yeah.
finances and whatever it might be. But it was, yeah. So, and just suddenly, waking up and also, initially the smell of the person, right? Still on the pillows, the washing, coming home at night and having a certain routine, like you would talk about the morning one. And I think that can get people a lot, that can get to people a lot. But I did what I needed to, and after I sold the house, I would drive past that house still, and I saw how people bought it and they were changing it. And I was like, they were doing exactly what the next phase we were going to do. So that for me, but I deliberately did that. And the same reason I went and I met the guy who killed him. Everyone said to me, don't do it. I said, I have to do it. It's for my own healing.
Yeah.
It's for my own, conclusion. And I'm happy I went to see the guy. And I had to forgive, I had to, and I remember, the cops in Joburg, at Joburg murder, at Brixton murder and robbery squad. Okay, that was a big murder and robbery in Joburg, and they were dealing with it. And those cops, man, they were giving me the guys.
Yeah.
They told me who he was, and they told me who his partner was. They told me who his child was, and the guy, he slipped me a paper with the address, basically telling me, you want to go vigilante? There you go. I'll never forget that. It was like, no, thank you. It was so funny because his daughter's name was the same as my goddaughter's name. And it was like, no, there was no ways I'm doing that. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, that's odd.
To go through all of that. Yeah, that was crazy. Crazy times. But, and I think it really, I had to go through all of that. I put myself through the ringer. I do. If whatever I've got to face, I will much rather face it than not face it.
Yeah.
If the opportunity comes there for me to do something, I'm going to take it. Because
I also just want to say, one shouldn't get bogged down by the routines and the paperwork and the, for those that may have been financially dependent, or now there's one less dinner plate to set or whatever. Don't get bogged down in the details. I remember after Max, D'Artagnan didn't want to open a beer can, and he didn't want to use the meat mallet. And I said to him, it's a meat mallet, okay? It's not Max. It's just the meat mallet. Use the meat, open, it's just a beer. Just open the can. It's going to sound like that in any other reality. Just open the bloody beer. Don't attach things that don't belong there, and make like,
so true. Great advice.
I changed the linen here immediately. I slept downstairs until I had the strength to actually take the linen off this massive bed. But we got it off. And then, because I wasn't going to do the hugging of the pillow. No. I was going to do the crying in the shower, but I wasn't going to do the hugging of the pillow. I have my own limits. Yeah.
Rather than beating Blixenbein die kissing. Lovely. So the depression, final realization of the inevitable. Yeah, I don't know if they were definitely, I was up and down, but I must say, I wouldn't say I had major depression, but it definitely.
Yeah, no, as a final realization of the inevitable, I would put that in with acceptance.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Testing, seeking realistic solutions. I don't think I ever tested. But I think what is also what I think was good was what we spoke about as well was the feeling jealous sometimes, actually, right? Jealous of
the envy. They call that the forgotten or hush stage of grief. Yes, go on.
Yeah, where you actually watching other couples now hanging around each other, going on holidays with families and stuff. Yeah, it was. I can't imagine. I can't remember the emotion, but I know for a while that did affect me. But not like in an angry way. It was just like it brought up memories, if that makes sense. And sometimes even jealous because he had left and I was still here, right? Like hanging out there in heaven now while I've got to do all the slog here. I was like, dude. But I think for me, one of the things that also hit me was And it was quite a long time after he died. And it was like, was I not worth you staying? Because I understand no matter how the death is, there's always that choice, that the spirit makes that choice to go, right? And it was like, was I not worth you staying? That was a big one for me. Big one.
The only jealousy I had was I was jealous of people's peace. I was jealous that they could laugh and really laugh and that they could sleep well without meds and that their lives were just fine. The way mine was at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock on the 17th of February. It was fine. I was jealous of that. But I never had, was I not good enough? I've told you this, I'm far too arrogant for that. I also never thought like, why was I not good enough to go? I have way too much stuff to still do. So I didn't have any of that. And yeah, but I was just jealous of people's peace. I was jealous that they were okay and that I was not, that I was sad and that I was still going to be sad for a long time. I was jealous of that because I wanted peace. I just didn't,
I mean that for me was a tough one. That and the moment of realization as well. A few months after he died, driving home one night, and just in that moment, it just hit me in my cells. I'm never ever gonna see him again. I'm never gonna touch him again. I'm never. And of course, you know this. Of course, you know it. But it kind of hit home. It just hit me in my cells one night, and never, because he had his. I recognized his walk, whether it was outside on the ground or coming down the passage or whatever, hearing that walk again, hearing his laugh, hearing him tease me, because we had a great relationship, there was lots of teasing and joking and stuff, and he had a strong Austrian accent, and he came up with these
like
hilarious. He had these hilarious, I used to call them Hannesisms, like come up with these own, like it says, freezy cold. Not freezing, it was freezy cold outside.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So that for me was a corner to turn as well. But I think, when we realize it, I mean, that's advice I can give to anyone, is when you realize these things and you know it, you kind of have to talk yourself out of that hole. You got to just coach yourself through it. You really, really, really do. And once
that's what I do. I must use the analogy. I put my placemat. I set my table. So my placemat is my logic. And on the plate, I unpack the emotional stuff. And then I take a knife and a fork and I begin to dig. But it's anchored in the logic. So that I can feel my emotions. And if it's too much, I just put it aside, pretend I'll put it in a Tupperware in the fridge, and tomorrow I'll take it out, put it back on the plate on top of the placemat. Because the one thing the biggest mistake I made with my father was I didn't integrate emotionally, and it took me years to recover from his death. So this time I'll anchor in logic, which I like, because I like control over what's happening to me. But I will process every single emotion, every single one, even if I do it piecemeal. But so I see Rena says he felt that he wasn't a great person and therefore she left.
Hello, Rena.
I don't think that's true at all. I
don't think so at all.
Yeah, we have agreements.
Rena's has been a friend of mine for many years as well. And Rena's funny. Yanna and I were just talking this morning, and Rena's wife passed from cancer as well. But I was listening to a podcast this morning called From Heartbreak to Happiness. And it speaks about this guy. He was actually telling his story of his wife who passed away from cancer. And how, speaking about the last moments they had together, the way they used to dance together, he had to help her to the bathroom and put on the loo, but before that they would have a little dance together, and like it would feel for him like they were 100 years old, like that whole life they've lived, in that moment. But also him having to make the decision of turning off her machine, her life support machine. She was in an induced coma, and then he had to make that decision. And I think that has got to be one of the hardest things. I think, in my situation and in yours, it was a shock. It was unexpected, but it was there in your face, so immediate that you had no option but to accept it. And I think in situations like that, and I think, Renus, you can probably concur, is that you literally sit, and for months and months and sometimes years, you watch your partner literally dissolve in front of your eyes. And then, of course, I'll go to the doctor, and then they're in remission, so they're fine again. And then, boom, it's back again, and then back in remission. So there's this cat and mouse game all the time. And then eventually, when there's, in these situations, when there's nothing, all resources have now run dry type thing, they literally fade away in front of your eyes. I think that must be one of the hardest things. And having as a partner to make the decision to turn off your wife's life support system, that must be really, 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 really hard to do. I don't know. What's your take on that?
I just think Rena should see that there was a contract between the two souls, that he promised to be that for her.
Yeah.
Maybe she was that for him in another life, but that there was a contract and that he fulfilled that contract. It's the same way with Max's blood. It was my job. I don't know why, but it was my job. Only things that were in my head. It's my job.
Absolutely.
I don't think anybody dies because we're not good enough. I don't think other people die because we're not good enough. At all. Ever.
It's their path, and I know that.
Yeah.
And I know that. It's everyone has their path. And we can't.
That's a heavy burden to carry. So you should release that, because she definitely didn't die because you're not a good person. That's
I agree, Renus. You see, Renus, I'm not the only one who says so.
And I'm really clever, like Bob.
Yeah, Yanna's smart. Yanna's very smart. She and I therapize once a week, Renus. Take note. And then, of course, the final step is acceptance, right? Cheers, Mommy. Is acceptance. And I mean, I think, but you and I were speaking, I think that was already the first step for us. But I think for me, that final step would be peace. To actually find our peace within the situation, where we accept that she's never, or he's never coming back again. They are always there, even though they're not there in the physical form anymore. They're at peace, they're happy, they're fulfilling their spiritual duty.
5 weeks. For me, it was 5 weeks. 25th of March was the first morning I woke up, went downstairs, nuked my milk, poured my coffee, sat down and said, oh dear, I haven't thought of Max all morning.
That's amazing. Yeah. I don't remember when that happened for me, but I know it was a gradual process.
Yeah, but we had you didn't have Facebook then. We've got Facebook now. I actually scrolled back on my page to go and see, because I know about my peace post, and that peace post was a real post, and it was the 25th of March.
Yeah. I know social media does help with these things on some strange level. It really does.
It does date things quite nicely. Yeah.
Yeah. So. No, it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't. It's not. There aren't. There was not Facebook then. So, but yeah, and I think that final acceptance and the peace, and now you can move forward, and you're a more enriched being in moving forward. You feel more enriched. You feel blessed that this person chose to spend their life with you, or they're part of their life.
And you have an added angel. There's an added angel.
Totally. Oh, yeah.
Because he's there.
Totally.
Yeah, he's there. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, yeah, anything else from your side, young lady?
Are you talking to me, or are you talking to like the comments people? Because I'm not the young lady anymore. I just think, Chantelle, I think the most important message I want to get out is that death comes like a thief in the night. It does that. But we all know that crime is real and that you must always be prepared. I'm not saying you will always be a victim of crime. I'm just saying that death will always come to your door. If not for you, for somebody that you know. There is nobody that is going to go through this life unless you are a newborn or a 1-year-old or whatever who passes. But there is nobody who is untouched by death. And we need to normalize grief, and we need to normalize death as a critical, essential part of life. The same way that we normalize mental health or financial security or whatever, we need to normalize death, and we need to normalize sadness. That people can be sad.
Exactly.
And be sad. Howl. My other therapist, long ago therapist, she always used to say to me, Yanna, when you really want to cry and feel sorry for yourself, go stand in front of the mirror and howl your eyes out, look at yourself and feel really sorry for yourself. And then 5 minutes later, you wipe your eyes and you go back down and you do your job. Get over it. So.
Like, no, I don't see myself looking that hideous.
No, she always used to say, cry in the mirror so you can see what you look like when you pity party. I'm not saying grief is a pity party. I'm just saying, if you need to howl, howl. It's fine. If you are sad, be sad. My colleagues know. I go in, and it's not so much now anymore, but I would literally sit there and they'd make a joke and I'd get short and whatever. I'm sorry, I'm having a bad day. Just, it's one of those days. It's not a good day. And then it gets better because people understand that you're just not cool today. Tomorrow you're better, or even halfway through the day and you're better. So we just have to acknowledge that we can't all be funny and sparkly and happy and chirpy and, perfectly. We struggle. We all struggle. People die and they break our flippin' hearts. And it is what it is. It's life. And at least we have a story to tell.
And you can turn that loss into a beautiful gain.
You've got to turn it into gold. Alchemy.
Yeah.
It's important.
Exactly. Well, I'm so happy that you have joined me again, and I look forward to our next convo, which no doubt will be soon.
Okay, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it tomorrow night in therapy. Okay.
Yes, when we therapize.
Yes, when we therapize.
Okay. Yanna, thank you. You're my beautiful
Thank you for
friend,
having
Yanna.
me.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
It's such fun always having you on. You're definitely one of my favorite guests. Not that you're a guest.
No, I'm family.
You're just part of the furniture already.
The antique furniture.
Like, you're not antique. You're a babe.
Listen, there's like 6 years between us. That's from 0 to grade 1. Go away. It's not so much. DJ. Thank you to everybody who tuned in, and thank you, Lisa D.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. Renus, Lisa D, Charmaine. Lovely to have you guys here. And I will see you guys later with Caleb's show, no doubt. So God bless everybody. Have a beautiful Sunday. And see you later.
Thank you.